Thank you. Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome. February here already, snow on the ground, which is a real shame because last week I was talking about the fact that my daffodils were coming out and my snowdrops were coming out, and they have suddenly all disappeared. So you get this carrot dangled in front of you that everything's going to be bright and beautiful. Suddenly that all goes, and we're in the midst of the beast from the east. Well, welcome anyway. Welcome to this Wednesday Hump Day session. Today's session is all around personal finance. I'm delighted that the team, Maria, Christelle, Rebecca, and Manal are here, and Rebecca's going to be talking about use it or lose it. But before we get into that, at the end of last week's session, I invited everybody who wanted to stay behind and contribute to our International Women's Day video. We're getting going. It's a little bit slow, but we're getting going. We have some contributions, and I just want to inspire you to think about getting involved and recording your little excerpt or staying behind after today, and we can record it for you. So I'm going to just quickly share my screen. And E2W, we choose to challenge. We want action, not words.
I choose to challenge because diversity is really important. It leads to a much better workplace environment, better decision making, more creativity, higher productivity. Diversity is not just about quotas.
I choose to challenge for our members, industry leaders, alpha challengers and growing community of women in financial services.
I choose to challenge us all to reinforce our commitment by creating many more opportunities for women to thrive, succeed and be recognised.
So hopefully that's given you some inspiration, some ideas to come forward, put your video, record your video. We can do it for you if you want at the end of the session, and just contribute to International Women's Day and our contribution to E2W's Women's Day as a community. Love your support and love your help if you could. That would be brilliant. Enough from me. I should say thank you, Katie, for making that video as well. You amazing, amazing. All right, I'm going to pass over now to Maria, who's going to host the rest of today's session. Maria, lovely to see you again. Haven't seen you since last year, first time this year. Welcome, over to you. Over to you.
Thank you, Mark. Hello, ladies. Good to see you all over here. Many years ago, the accountant of Arnold Schwarzenegger told him that he has to pay a lot of taxes. And Arnold responded that he's very happy about that because having to pay lots of taxes means he made a lot of money. So he loved paying taxes. And the moral of this story for me is that I don't buy it. Nobody loves paying lots of taxes. And for that reason, we have Rebecca Maxwell here with us today to tell us how to make sure that we are getting every deduction that we are entitled to and we are not paying anything more than we absolutely must, no matter how much we made. Rebecca doesn't need a long introduction because she's been kind enough to be our speaker more than once, so most of you know her. But just a short one, she's a financial planner with St. James, and she used to be a trader before that. So after the session, we are going to open for Q&A as usual. And having said that, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Rebecca.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Mark, and Christelle and Katie and everybody else behind the scenes. I'm just going to quickly share my screen and let's hope that this works this time. Can you all see that? Fantastic. Now, as Maria said, I am a financial planner. Great to see so many familiar names there. Not too many faces, but yeah, for those who I haven't met before, I've got my own business underneath the St James's Place umbrella, and that is after being a trader in the city for 20 years. And I am passionate about empowering people through financial education, meaning that if you actually have got control over your finances, it just creates much better overall well-being. We spend so much time on our mental well-being and on our physical well-being. It's important that we also look at our financial well-being. Now, I hope in the next 20 minutes, I will give you some helpful tips as to how to make the best uses of your tax relief and allowances, and to secure your financial future and that of your family. Now, no matter where you are in your personal career or in your financial journey, tax reliefs are hugely beneficial. Even if you don't quite realise it just yet, I promise you, your future self will thank you for this. And I think we can all agree that 2020 was a year like no other. The strong bull market came to a sudden halt, and the bounce in markets that we saw was just astonishing, with many markets ending the year higher than they were at the start of 2020. There are always risks that pose a challenge to investors in a given time, and also unforeseen risks that come up, throughout the year. And these are beyond your control. I think it's really important not to stop those risks from. It's really important not to stop your financial planning because you are afraid of those risks. It's important just to keep focusing on the horizon, just to keep focusing on things that are true to you. And then we have the best chance of achieving our goals, focusing on what we can control, which are how and where we invest our money, the size of our retirement fund, and how much of our estate we pass on free of inheritance tax. It's really important to approach this on a personal level. We are all exposed to taxes in different ways and have got different goals, aspirations, and beliefs. Some of you might be basic rate taxpayers, yet others are exposed to the additional rate tax of 45%. Some might be exposed to gains, to capital gains, and others concerned about their family's exposure to inheritance tax. In my experience, it's best to understand your exposure to taxation, understand which reliefs and allowances you are eligible for, how and if you are using them, and then only once these are achieved may you begin to look at more active strategies to reduce some of your tax liabilities. And a little word of warning, if something looks too good to be true, then it probably is, which is where many investors, which is where many celebrities have been caught out in the past. And my son's just walked in asking me to make his lunch, so sorry about that noise. I think it's important to note that today I'm going to be talking about the tax allowances that are current as we stand. The budget on the 3rd of March is going to be interesting to see if the government takes the opportunity to make changes to the allowances. There is obviously the big question of how we're going to pay for COVID, but there is one thing that we can be confident about, and that is that the allowances and reliefs are unlikely to be more generous in the future. So think seriously about using what you can whilst it's available, where of course it's in your best interest to do so. The title of today, use them or lose them. Some of these allowances you will lose if you do not use them before the end of this tax year. I will cover the key ones to think about before the end of the tax year. We're going to start with ISAs. I'm sure you've all heard of ISAs, and they are individual savings accounts. They were introduced in 1999, taking over from the PEP, and the ISA allowance has increased substantially over the years. It now stands at £20,000 per individual, as the government has encouraged people to save for their future. There are 4 main types of ISA, they being cash, stocks and shares, innovative finance, and lifetime ISAs. I'm sure many of you have ISAs. The question is, has the ISA you have got, is it aligned to your savings goals? With interest rates lower than at an all-time low, money held in cash ISAs is failing to even keep up with inflation. So the purchasing power is shrinking. It's not even maintaining its value. It is actually losing real value. One question to ask yourself is, how long is your ISA investment for? If it's for less than 5 years, then is it earmarked for anything? Then yes, perhaps cash is better for you. But if it's for 5+ years, would it be potentially more worthwhile to invest in something else, given more scope for capital and income growth, and maximise any tax savings opportunities? LISAs are great for first-time buyers. You can put £4,000 in a year. The government tops it up by 25%. You can open them up until your 40th birthday, but they need to be used for a first house purchase or a retirement fund. One of the main sticking points, something to be aware of LISAs, is they can only be used for a house up to the value of £350,000. Now, in central London, that is hard to achieve. And if you do want to use a LISA to buy a property at a higher value than 350, then you do lose your government allowance. So you can use the money, but you just lose the allowance. Otherwise, you can stick with it until retirement. But they are, I love the idea of LISAs. I'm going to flick through. There is also the personal savings allowance. Since 2016, most savings interest has paid growth. Non-taxpayers and base rate payers have a savings allowance of £1,000. They can earn £1,000 worth of interest before they have to pay tax on it. For higher rate, it is £500. Now, with interest rates as low as they are, you need a lot of cash in the bank in order to generate £1,000. And if you do have a big chunk of money that you're keeping, perhaps for a house deposit, do make sure, and you're living as a couple, do make sure that it's in the name of the lower taxpayer, just so you can maximise that allowance. And again, that is an annual allowance that cannot be carried forward. There's such choice as to how you use your ISA allowance. So given the interest on cash, given that there is a personal savings allowance, is in effect tax-free, you might consider whether a stocks and shares ISA is a potentially better use for your ISA allowance, giving you the opportunity to generate both income and capital. Free. You could have a stocks and shares ISA that was actually free of stocks and shares. You could have exposure to property, gilts and corporate bonds, or you could hold an investment in a balanced portfolio, reflecting your attitude to risk across different sectors, geographies and fund managers. The key thing is it is flexible, and you have until the 5th of April to use your £20,000 ISA limit. You cannot roll it forward until next year. Still on the subject of ISAs, junior ISAs are a great way to save for children or grandchildren. They have to be opened up by a parent. The maximum is £9,000 a year. Again, this cannot be rolled forward. Children get access to them at the age of 18, and they are a great way to save for university, car, or towards a deposit for a house. Again, the investment behind it could be cash, or it could be an investment in the same way as an adult ISA. And if children have got any of the child trust funds, the freebies that were given out by the government a few years ago, I know my children got them, they can be transferred into ISAs, because a lot of the fund managers with the child trust funds are not really focusing on them anymore. That is worth thinking about. So aside from the ISA wrapper and the other allowances, and the savings allowance, there are also some other allowances that you can look at. Everybody is entitled to a £2,000 dividend allowance. So it means that there are still tax advantages for investing in an investment over cash. So that dividend payment could come from an equity unit trust. It could come from an equity portfolio, or I know many of you work under your own limited businesses, so it could come from that. So everybody's entitled to £2,000 dividend allowance, which cannot be rolled forward. And then any income on dividends is charged at 7.5% for basic, 32.5% for higher, and 38% for additional. There is the capital gains tax as well. So standing at £12,300 per year. Again, you can generate £12,300 worth of income without paying tax. This, again, you would lose at the end of the year if you do not use it. Then any capital gains above your 12,300 would be taxed at 10% for basic rate taxpayers and 20% for higher rate taxpayers and above, unless it's property, and then there is a surcharge of 8%, of course, if not your main residence. Investment bonds are a powerful tool, as you can control when you trigger the tax liability. Often they are bought by people when they are perhaps higher rate taxpayers, and then the tax liability is triggered in retirement when they are perhaps a basic rate taxpayer. They're really effective in inheritance tax planning, and they're very good to put into trusts. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but that is just another option of things that you can do. Then, of course, there is pensions. Now, pensions are in effect an investment just within a tax wrapper, and they're there to encourage us to save towards retirement. And the government attaches a very generous tax relief on these. Sadly, the allowances have been steadily shrinking over the last few years. But it is really, really important to focus on your pension, in line with my previous talk. And when it comes to retirement planning, the reasons are simple, but actually the challenges are complex. One thing you really need to think about is, longevity. How do you fund a retirement that is potentially as long as your career? I personally find that really frightening. Longevity is underestimated by so many, and the length of time your pension pot is going to need to provide an income can be quite frightening. With better standards of living, improvements in medicine, and a healthier diet, reaching 100 is no longer going to be uncommon. And in fact, nearly a third of children born today will reach 100. The shift of demographics as well, with an increase in the older population and a decrease in the current workforce to support them, puts a massive pressure on the state pension provision, which does mean that personal pensions are even more important. I spoke about shrinking allowances. You could currently invest up to £40,000 into a pension, depending on your earnings, and then it shrinks around the 200, 240 mark. That does taper down to £4,000. But for most people, it's going to be £40,000. And there is the lifetime allowance, which again has been shrinking. Why is it always when we reach these things that they're never as good as the previous generation? So the current allowance is 1.073 million, which will increase in line with inflation. And if you're looking at a income of 4% on a pot of the maximum, that would generate an income of 43,000. Just to give you an idea, because I'm often asked, okay, if I've got a pot of X, what does that mean in income? There are various ways that you can take it, but that is just a bit of guidance. And it's not just those who are approaching retirement who need to look out for that lifetime allowance. High earners whose pension pots are doing really well should just keep one eye on how close they are to that lifetime allowance, because it might make sense for them to change their saving strategy, as they get closer to it, because the lifetime allowance charge is quite large. Why should I invest into a pension? Now, investing into a pension is actually more attractive than ever because of the pension freedoms announced a few years ago, meaning that there's greater freedom when you're taking your pension. You no longer have to take an annuity, and also it's more easily left to your beneficiaries as a pot of tax-free money. Many people were put off in the past because your pension died with you. Your pension no longer dies with you. Okay. So subject to certain limitations, for every 80p that you contribute into a pension, the government boosts this by 20p in tax relief. And then higher rate tax earners and additional rate tax earners can claim an additional amount of tax relief back through their tax return. So a £1 pension contribution could cost a higher rate taxpayer just 60p. With the government under increasing pressure to reduce public spending, there is no guarantee that the higher rate of tax relief will be maintained in the future. So those who can should consider fully utilising their annual allowance to make the most of the tax breaks on offer in the current situation. Unused allowances can be carried back 3 years. So this tax year the end of this tax year will be the last time that you can use your 2017-2018 allowance. But you always have to use this year's first. So you use 2021's first, and then any additional you would carry back. You would use your any unused allowance from 2017-2018. And the £40,000 limit is for personal contributions and also company contributions. Children can also benefit from pensions. Again, it's a way of saving for children's future, but if you are happy for them not to have access to the money until they are 55, they can benefit from tax relief as well, which people don't realise. So you can invest $2,880 in a kid's pension and it be grossed up to $3,600. Also, non-taxpayers can benefit from that allowance too. And either if you've got a non-tax-paying spouse, or if any of you, potentially take a career break and it might be an option to redirect some of your savings into a pension and benefit from that tax relief, which is something that definitely could be relevant to the E2W community. I feel like we're whizzing through this at record pace, but I'm always really conscious of the time. So, whilst maximising ISAs, pension contributions, and the other relief, like the savings relief and the dividend relief, are the most important things to look at. First of all, it's maximising that you're using the allowance, but it's also how you are using it. There are also some tax reducers that you could look at. Now, these are not suitable for everybody. They are, in fact, becoming more mainstream as the pension allowances decrease. And these are namely venture capital trusts, VCTs, or enterprise investment schemes, EIS. And these are, in effect, investing in, the government wants to incentivise you to invest into new ventures and new startups. And if they're successful, hopefully those businesses will go on to employ more people and pay more taxes. So in effect, the government will recoup the allowances that they gave out in the first place. Now, given that these may only interest a few of you, I'm happy to chat in more detail about these offline. I'm not going to go into more detail about these now. The final big topic is inheritance tax. Now, I think inheritance tax is the least popular tax. And Rising estates plus confusion and inertia means that the Office for Budget Responsibility expects to see a 19% increase in IHT revenues in the next 4 years. There are many legitimate ways that you can reduce exposure to this tax with some forward thinking, should you wish. There's been lots of changes in legislation, and these can be confusing. And it's really important to actually seek advice on this, because what you learn secondhand may not be true. And it can be very misleading. Just generally speaking, every individual has got a nil rate band of 325,000, which can be passed on to their spouse on death. The inheritance rate tax on top of that is 40%. But there was in 2017 an additional primary residence allowance, which was introduced, another tax-free amount of 175,000. So long as that 175,000 comes from your primary residence, gets passed to direct descendants, and the total value of your estate is less than £2 million. So how, we're talking about this tax year, we're talking about allowances. I mean, that's the theme of things. How can you reduce your estate? There's lots of complicated ways for the way to reduce your estate. But one of the things that you can do before the end of this tax year, and again, I'm sure most of you aren't desperate to give any money that you have away, but these are conversations that you can be having with parents and grandparents. And that is, the main one is you can give away £3,000 a year, and that immediately reduces your estate. So you're not subject to the 7-year rule. You can roll that back for 1 year. So if you haven't used your £3,000 allowance, you can give away £6,000 this year. And then you can also, and that is £6,000 in total, that's not £6,000 per child. And there are also some small gifts which you can, the small gift allowance which you can use, wedding gifts as well, if there are any weddings happening at the moment. But that is something that is an allowance that you can use before the end of the tax year. Just going to quickly mention trusts. I did mention that there were some more complicated ways of reducing your tax exposure. Now, many people, they want to plan, they want to do some estate planning, they want to reduce their inheritance tax liabilities, but they don't want to lose control of their money. And there are many different ways that you can use trusts in order to achieve those goals. This is really specialised financial planning, and this is something that, again, if anybody is interested, families are interested, I'm very happy to talk about offline, but I know for probably most of you sitting in this room, it is not apparent for you at this moment. But you'll probably you may remember this conversation in 20 years' time, and where it does become apparent. And if I've just put a seed of education into your heads, then I feel like I've done a good job. So there we have it. These are, I hope that I've kind of given you a whistle-top tour of some tax tips and some key considerations that you can use between now and the 5th of April and beyond that. Really re-emphasising, I'm going to send this out on the WhatsApp group, but really re-emphasising that it is it's very much a personal thing, and what is right for you might not be right for the person sitting next to you. And after the last talk, I enjoyed talking to many of you on a one-to-one basis, and I'm very happy to open up my offer of a complimentary financial health check for anybody who is interested, or even if you've had one before and there's something else that has cropped up, really happy for you to reach out to me directly, either by email or on my LinkedIn. And I think, Maria, we're now going to open it up for questions.
Yes, we will. Thank you, Rebecca. That was very informative on so many levels that I have never thought of. So ladies, I'd like to ask you, if you have a question, to please turn on your camera, unmute yourself, maybe raise your hand, and go ahead. Yeah. Come on. somebody gotta have a question.
Okay. Yeah, we'll continue.
Actually, is it okay to go? Or
yeah, absolutely. Please do.
I actually have a question. What is your view on sort of the ETFs as a part of the investment option for individuals? Because there are quite a few of them. Arguably, they offer a good thing because they're more tradable, more liquid. How do you offer them, let's say, as part of the mix for your clients?
Yeah, it's funny because I don't actually have ETFs in my portfolio, but I think, ETFs are great. They are low cost and they're low cost and they're highly liquid. It's really important to have a diversified portfolio. Again, I would not put everything in ETFs, but I think they are a really important part of building a portfolio. Diversification is key.
Sorry guys, in case somebody, I can't assume everybody know, ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund, just in case, sorry for the, shouldn't throw a lot of abbreviations without explaining. No, it's interesting because the reason I'm asking this is obviously generally when you come to planning, and by the way, thank you for summarizing actually a couple of things. I was like, oh yes, I need to think about that one as well. Do you think that, why do you think ETFs sort of didn't make it into more retail sphere as much as they are in sort of more institutional investors? Because there's been a massive shift from active to passive investment, as it were. Or do you think it's just the time to catch up?
Yeah, there has been a massive shift from active to passives. And I think, for example, some of our funds are going to start including, more ETFs and the lower cost. Just have them within the mix, most certainly.
Okay, thank you.
They're never going to beat the indexes. They are, they are certainly things to look at, 100%.
But arguably, as you said, not every ETF, not all animals are the same, as it were, but some ETFs have a much lower cost base versus some other investments. So that could, which means that it feeds into the money left in the pot, which feeds into the ultimate pot growing bigger.
Exactly. The low cost is definitely hugely attractive.
Okay, thank you.
But sometimes you mustn't be swayed. Just because they're low cost doesn't mean they're better. It's like the cheapest thing isn't always better.
No, I would agree. ETFs need to be looked at because some trade more than the others. It's just
absolutely as part of the broader.
Okay, thank you so much.
I have a couple of questions. The first one is for the annual gifts that you mentioned. Can you make them to very young children? I have a baby which is less than a year old. Does it apply or there's a minimum age?
No, they can apply to anybody. So actually, if you're contributing into your child's ISA, for example, that could count as your annual gift.
Perfect. And the other one, sorry, I had a couple of questions. The other one was on the various options that you actually have put together and presented very well. Thank you for that, by the way. Is there any limitation if you already have quite a bit of real estate?
Sorry, any limitation to?
On investing or getting some of the tax reliefs if you already own a couple or more real estate properties?
So if you own the properties, then if you sell the properties, then you will use your tax-free allowances. And I haven't covered rental income because that's a totally separate thing, and that's not my expertise. And I know that those allowances are decreasing.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, I will get in touch separately so I don't bother everybody with all my questions.
Okay, fine. But if no one else is answering them, please do feel free.
We have a question on the chat. Does paying for a child's wedding count as a wedding gift?
This is a tricky one because I was actually thinking that. I was thinking, paying for a child's wedding, paying for school fees. I think hopefully you're going to live for 7 years after you pay for a wedding. It is an expense. I think it'd be very tough if it counted as a wedding gift. I think it's a parental expense.
Okay, thank you.
That is not an expert answer. That's a sort of common sense answer.
More questions, please.
Amelie, you're...
I've got one. Hi, everyone. Hi, Rebecca. Thanks a lot. It's really helpful background on tax savings. I have a question on pensions. You've mentioned that the allowance for 2020 to 2021 goes from 40,000 to 4,000. I don't know if I misunderstood your point, or if you could elaborate a little bit more.
It depends on your earnings. It's all to do with your net income and your adjusted net income. You'll probably go to sleep after this. If your income is between 200,000 and 240,000, it could potentially start, your pension allowance could potentially start decreasing from 40,000 to 4,000.
Okay.
It's tapered, but it's only once your income, your total income, so basic and bonus, it falls in that category.
So above 200,000.
It's above, some aspects above 200 and some aspects 240. If you want to talk about it specifically to you, we can talk about it offline. It's a bit of a complicated calculation. That's why I'm being a bit vague.
That's okay. I'm not yet in that band, so not a problem.
I'll make the use of your 40,000 then.
Yeah, I am, absolutely, which is why I wanted to ask you. Thank you so much.
No problem. And first and foremost as well, always look at what your companies are giving you, because there's a lot of company matching that happens. And you know, ultimately that is free money. So, you know, look at that first.
Yeah, I'm maxing this out.
Yeah, brilliant.
Cheers.
Can I jump in there, Rebecca? Thank you so much for that. Just on your, sorry, it's Crystal here. Just on your kind offer, would you mind just giving us just a quick walkthrough in terms of what a health check, what does that mean? What type of questions do you ask us?
No. And it's funny, people come to me for health checks, and it's all spectrums. You don't have to have a lot of money. And I know I'm really conscious that when we're talking about these allowances, 40,000, let's use previous. Not everybody has that kind of money, but people still can benefit from financial advice. And it could be whether paying off, you know, some of the questions that I'm asked are, should I be paying off the mortgage, or should I be investing into an ISA? I've got this life insurance policy. I took it out 10 years ago. I don't know what it means now. Is it still relevant, or is there something cheaper on the market? You know, looking at the distribution, it could be in a couple, and seeing if all the money is in the wife's name, but the husband is the house husband, does it make sense to use some of his allowances? You know, it is just an overview of your finances, working out what you've got, where it is, what it's doing, and what it means.
Perfect. And there's no sort of minimum income?
No minimum income, none whatsoever.
Cool, thank you.
I think Minal was just...
Go ahead. We can't hear you, Minal. We don't hear you.
Type it on the chat.
Yeah, please do.
Come on, Minal, you need to type quicker than that. Can we hear you now? No.
You touched base on pension. Be passed on beneficiaries.
So is it the death? Is it the? Is it? You're going to have to nod your head, Manal, if I've got this right. Are you interested in almost like how pensions are passed on to beneficiaries? Is that right? If your pension is below the total lifetime allowance of 1.073 million, and you die before the age of 73, you die before the age of 75, then that pot of money will be passed on to your beneficiaries tax-free. And it doesn't take, so say you had 3 children, it gets passed on to your 3 children, it doesn't use up any of their lifetime allowances. If you die after the age of 75, then your pension will be passed on to your beneficiaries, but it won't be taxed at inheritance tax 40%. It will be taxed at their relevant income tax up to the certain level. So if they're basic rate taxpayers, up to 50 grand will be taxed at 20% and then 40% after that. Okay.
Anyway.
Which is a massive change.
Am I allowed one more question?
Yeah, sure.
With regards to what you just said about the passing on, if you don't have any children, is husband a beneficiary?
Yes. He husband. You mean for the
pension, because we don't have children.
Oh, 100%. Your husband is your beneficiary. Your beneficiary could be anybody. It could be a niece. It could just be whoever you want to leave your pension to.
So in a sense, as long as it states somewhere in the documents. I mean, I think the question is just, let's say, I normally try to do all of this, but sometimes, you miss things. So if accidentally my pension, I mean, I think at work, they do know that he's a beneficiary, but let's say there's another pension, I think from the old place, I'm not sure if I updated it there. If there's no explicit statement, will it default to him or does it have to be explicit?
It will default to your husband.
Okay, excellent, good.
The pension trustees always reserve the right to change the beneficiaries, but that would be if you suddenly left it to your 19-year-old Greek lover or something. They may,
first, but okay, fair enough. I get your point.
They may think,
Fair enough.
I like that idea.
Fair enough, good point. No, thank you for that. That's important. Thank you very much.
But
anyone else?
It's really important to have a will, though, which we're going to do at another date.
Do you need? Yep.
Sorry, Maria. Hey, it's Jade. How are you?
Oh, hi, Jade.
Hello, hi. Sorry, I can't turn my camera on. It's broken for some reason.
It's okay.
But I just had a question about property. So gifting property. How can you do that without triggering tax, or can you?
That's harder. That's a lot harder, but you can do it into trust.
Okay.
But yeah, triggering tax, that's not a simple answer. It is there are trusts that you can use. So you gift it into a trust and then children or siblings become the beneficiary of the trust, or if it's from parents, etc.
Okay, great, thank you.
We got some more questions on the chat. Do you need to state in your will who should the pension go to if you are not married and have no kids?
100% yes.
Okay, next one. How much on average should we be investing in pension per year as a percentage of salary?
Well, auto-enrollment is 5% for an employee and 3% for an employer, so that's 8%. Now, auto-enrollment is great because it means more people are contributing into a pension. Auto-enrollment is not so great because I think it gives people a false sense of security. They think I've got a pension, great, they'll get to retirement and they've got 20p in their pension. And that's not really going to pay for the lovely things they want to do in retirement. It's not necessarily a percentage of salary. I think really, I'm really conscious if you're, often when you're in your 30s, you've got an awful lot of strains on your finances. You may be wanting to upgrade your house or buy your first house. You may or may not have children. And then the pension does slip down the priority order. I just think, invest what you can in your pension. And the more you invest earlier on, the better, really. So there is no strong answer. There is no right answer, but just, really try and invest as much as you can. If you follow me on LinkedIn, I post a lot of articles about this and graphs and things about the cost of delay and what things might look like in the future. So do feel free just to follow me on LinkedIn as well for added information.
How does passing on property work in terms of inheritance tax?
This is more complicated. This is more of a conversation for an accountant than it is for me. But yeah, again, Finto, we can take that offline. I know a lot of people are interested in that.
Okay, good. Thank you. And I think that's going to be the last one. What happens if negative rates do materialize, mostly with regards to pensions? That's a good one.
Well, I mean, interest rate, I personally don't think they will materialise, but it is obviously a threat at the moment. It's going to make mortgages very interesting, and it's going to mean that it's going to be more important to actually invest your money rather than keep it in cash, because not only is the purchasing power of your cash decreasing, but the real value will also be decreasing too.
Okay, I'm going to read one more. If a pension does not have a will, if a person does not have a will, what is the auto rule for passing down to spouse and kids?
So an amount, and I want to say 250,000, the first 250,000, but that might not be quite up to date, passes to your spouse, and then the rest gets divided between children and spouse. So you might end up, if you've got lots of children, you might end up with the children owning more of the house than the spouse does, which really does signify the importance of having a will. Even a simple will is better than no will.
Good. That sounds like a good way to wrap it up. Even a simple will is better than no will. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Again, it was really informative and a lot of important stuff to know and think about. Food for thought, as you people like to say over here. Now I am going to hand over back to Mark.
And I need to come off mute. So, Rebecca, as always, thank you. Fantastic. I encourage anybody who wants to reach out to you. I know people who have, and always good, sound, sensible advice, confidential and informed. So please, if you haven't got Rebecca's details, Katie or I can give them to you. And thank you again. Thanks for the informed session. Thank you, Maria, for hosting. Brilliant as always. Whenever I see you, I always think of one of those first things that you said to me, that a man is not a plan, which I think was just great. It stuck with me. So,
you know, it's very difficult because every time I have to try to be that, and I have a feeling the Arnold Schwarzenegger story didn't do the job. So next time I'm going to have to try to be better.
Yeah, brilliant, brilliant. And thank you for the rest of the Wealthier team. So Christelle, Manal, I know Jade has joined. Thank you for your support in putting this on. It's absolutely brilliant. So, right, next week we have a couple of events on, I believe, Katie. You're nodding at me. The first one is on Tuesday night when Leslie Kumar will be joining us to talk about culture and conduct and the regulatory whatever it is, I've lost for words, environment around conduct and culture in financial services. Hugely well-informed lady is Kumar, and come along and join us. The details are on the website. That's Tuesday evening at 6:30. And then on Wednesday for our coffee break, we are joined by Lin Yu. Lin Yu was born in China during the one-child per family regulations and laws. Found herself over in the UK at university and is now quite senior in Goldman Sachs. And she's going to talk about her diversity journey and what she's doing and putting in place and some of the challenges she faced during that journey. another inspirational guest speaker for our coffee break. So do come and join us again next week. The link is the same as always, but if you haven't got it, it's on the website. Brilliant. Katie, do I need to add anything? Is there anything left out? No? You good? Good. Brilliant. Then it just leaves me to say goodbye to those who are leaving us now, and hopefully some of you will stay on, stay with us, and make your recordings for what is a really important event, the International Women's Day. So brilliant. Maria, Rebecca, thank you very much. Katie as well, thank you. See you all next week, or see you in a minute if you're staying on. Thank you.